Ethan Walker? Who's asking? Sheriff Daniel Brooks. We've got an emergency. A teenage girl disappeared near Shadow Ridge, and the storm's getting worse by the minute. Ethan looked down at Rex, the retired German Shepherd canine who once saved soldiers in Syria. The dog suddenly growled toward the dark forest outside the cabin. "Why not send mountain rescue?" Ethan asked. "They're trapped after an avalanche. Earliest backup is 3 hours away." Daniel's voice turned quiet. "She doesn't have 3 hours." Snow slammed against the windows as the radio crackled again. "Sheriff, we found blood near the ridge." Daniel looked at Ethan nervously. "Your dog looks worried. He only does that when danger's close." Ethan grabbed his rifle and clipped Rex's tactical leash into place. "I need you and your dog to lead us through those mountains," Daniel said, "without getting anybody killed." Ethan opened the cabin door as freezing wind rushed inside. Rex barked once and charged into the blizzard. "It's just going to be me and the dog," Ethan muttered. "All right, Rex, let's bring her home. Your support helps us bring more powerful, emotional stories like this straight to you." The winter wind swept across the snow-covered mountains of western Montana, rattling the pine trees surrounding the small town of Blackwood Ridge. It was the kind of town where everyone knew each other, where old pickup trucks lined frozen streets, and where the mountains seemed beautiful during the day, but dangerous after sunset. Thick gray clouds rolled over Glacier National Park in the distance, while icy roads disappeared beneath fresh snow. Thousands of miles away, under the burning Syrian sun, another storm was unfolding. Dust and smoke drifted through the shattered remains of a small village outside Raqqa. The streets were silent except for distant gunfire echoing across broken concrete walls. Burned-out vehicles sat abandoned beside collapsed buildings, and the smell of smoke mixed with sand filled the air. Staff Sergeant Ethan Walker crouched behind a ruined stone barrier, gripping his rifle tightly. Ethan Walker was a 38-year-old American Special Forces soldier, with a tall, athletic build, hardened by nearly 2 decades of combat. His dark brown hair was cut short, streaked slightly with gray near the temples from years of stress and sleepless nights. A faded scar crossed the left side of his jawline, a reminder of an explosion years earlier in Afghanistan. Ethan's sharp blue eyes always seemed alert, scanning every movement around him, even when standing still. Quiet by nature, he carried himself with calm discipline, but years of war had made him emotionally distant, especially from the people he loved most. Beside him stood Rex. Rex was a 6-year-old German Shepherd canine, with a muscular black and tan body, thick fur around his neck, and intelligent amber eyes that constantly searched for threats. One of his ears had a small tear from a mission in Syria, and a long scar ran beneath his right shoulder through the fur. Rex moved with absolute control, every step deliberate and silent like a trained soldier. Though fiercely protective, he trusted Ethan completely and obeyed commands with near-human understanding. A nervous young radio operator ducked beside Ethan. "Walker," the man whispered, breathing heavily. "Command says there are civilians trapped near the eastern street, possible explosives." Ethan glanced toward the ruined neighborhood ahead. "How many civilians?" "3 kids, maybe more." Before Ethan could respond, Rex suddenly stiffened beside him. His ears rose sharply as a low growl rumbled from his throat. Ethan immediately understood. "IEDs," he muttered. The radio operator swallowed nervously. "You sure?" Ethan clipped the tactical leash onto Rex's harness. "He doesn't growl unless he smells explosives." Gunfire cracked nearby. Dust exploded from a broken wall across the street. The operator flinched. "We should wait for the bomb unit." Ethan shook his head. "Bomb unit's 30 minutes out." He looked toward the distant cries echoing between buildings. "Those kids don't have 30 minutes. He looked down at Rex. "Search." Rex moved instantly. The German Shepherd trotted carefully through the rubble-strewn alleyway, nose close to the ground. Ethan followed several feet behind while 2 soldiers provided cover from the intersection. A little girl suddenly appeared near a collapsed doorway. She looked no older than 8. Dirt covered her face, and tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched a smaller boy beside her. "Please," she cried in broken English. "Help us!" Ethan raised his hand calmly. "Don't move!" The children froze. Rex stopped suddenly beside a pile of broken bricks. The dog barked once. Ethan's expression darkened. An improvised explosive device was buried beneath the debris only 6 feet away from the children. One wrong step would kill everyone nearby. Ethan slowly approached, carefully placing each foot where Rex had walked. Sweat rolled down his forehead despite the heat. "It's okay," he told the girl softly. "You're gonna be all right." The little boy began crying harder. Rex moved closer to the children and gently nudged the boy's hand with his nose, calming him slightly. Ethan reached them carefully. "One at a time," he whispered. "Step exactly where I step." Minutes later, the children finally crossed safely into the alley behind Ethan. The radio operator exhaled shakily. "Jesus!" But Rex suddenly barked again, loud, aggressive. Ethan spun around. Another wire stretched across the alley entrance, a second bomb. The explosion erupted before anyone could react. The blast threw Ethan backward into the wall. Dust and smoke consumed the street. Rex crashed into him, shielding Ethan's body from falling debris. For several seconds, everything went silent, except ringing in Ethan's ears. Then he heard barking. Rex stood over him protectively, growling toward the smoke. Ethan coughed hard before slowly sitting up. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. "You good, boy?" Rex nudged Ethan's shoulder. The children were alive, shaken, but alive. The young radio operator stared at Rex in disbelief. "That dog just saved your life." Ethan looked at Rex quietly. "No," he said softly. "He's been saving my life for 6 years." 3 weeks later, snow covered the runways of Bozeman-Yellowstone International Airport. Ethan stepped out of the terminal, carrying a worn military duffel bag, while Rex walked beside him on a thick black leash. Travelers stopped to stare at the massive German shepherd, moving with military precision through the crowd. Rex's eyes constantly scanned the terminal exits, luggage carts, and nearby strangers. Even after retirement paperwork had been signed, his war instincts refused to fade. Waiting near the pickup lane stood Megan Walker. Megan Walker was a 36-year-old veterinarian with shoulder-length auburn hair, pale skin, and tired green eyes softened by kindness. Slim and graceful, she carried herself with quiet patience, but years of raising a child alone while Ethan served overseas had left emotional exhaustion hidden beneath her warm smile. Megan loved Ethan deeply, though part of her feared the distance war had created inside him. The moment she saw him, tears filled her eyes. Ethan barely had time to set down his bag before Megan wrapped her arms around him tightly. "You're finally home," she whispered shakily. Ethan held her close, breathing in slowly, as if trying to remember what peace felt like. Rex stood beside them silently, watching every passing stranger. Megan smiled softly at the dog. "And you," she said gently, scratching behind Rex's ears. "You made it home too." Rex relaxed slightly beneath her touch, but the reunion felt incomplete. "Where's Lily?" Ethan asked. Megan hesitated. "She had ski training." Ethan's face fell slightly. "She couldn't come?" "She's changed a lot, Ethan." Blackwood Ridge High School sat beneath heavy snowfall near the edge of town. Teenagers wearing winter jackets crossed icy sidewalks, while floodlights illuminated the school's ski training hill nearby. Lily Walker raced down the slope at full speed. Lily Walker was a 15-year-old girl with long, dark blonde hair, usually tied into a messy ponytail beneath her ski helmet. Tall and lean like her father, she had sharp blue eyes that often looked cold or guarded around other people. Once cheerful and outgoing as a child, years without her father at home had slowly hardened her emotionally. Though intelligent and fiercely independent, Lily struggled to trust others and often pushed teammates away whenever they tried getting close to her. She crossed the finish line nearly 2 seconds ahead of everyone else. "Nice run!" shouted Coach Jake Morrison. Jake Morrison was a former professional skier in his early 40s with a broad athletic frame, rough beard, and endlessly energetic personality. Unlike Lily, he believed teamwork mattered more than talent alone. "You're fast enough to win state," Jake told her, "but skiing's still a team sport." Lily pulled off her gloves coldly. "Then maybe I picked the wrong sport." One of the girls on the team rolled her eyes nearby. "She never talks to anybody anyway," the girl muttered quietly. Lily heard it. She always heard everything. Without responding, she grabbed her gear bag and walked away alone through the falling snow. That evening, Ethan stood quietly inside the family home near the fireplace, while Rex explored every room cautiously. The dog checked windows, hallways, and even closets like he was clearing a combat zone. "Relax," Ethan muttered softly. "You're home." But Rex remained alert. The front door opened. Lily stepped inside, carrying her skis over one shoulder. For a moment, father and daughter simply stared at each other. "You got taller," Ethan said carefully. Lily shrugged. "You missed a lot." The words hit harder than any bullet. Silence filled the room. Rex slowly approached Lily, stopping a few feet away. His tail moved cautiously once. Lily looked down at the massive German shepherd. "He's bigger than I thought." "He's retired now," Ethan said quietly. "He'll be staying with us." Rex sat calmly near her feet. Lily hesitated before gently touching the fur on his head. For the first time all evening, her expression softened slightly. Later that night, after everyone went to sleep, Lily opened her bedroom door quietly. Rex was lying outside her room, guarding it. The German shepherd lifted his head the moment she looked down at him. For several seconds, Lily simply stared at the dog. Then, very softly, she whispered, "Good night, Rex." The dog rested his head back onto his paws without moving away from her door. And for the first time in years, Lily didn't feel completely alone. Morning snow drifted softly across Blackwood Ridge as pale sunlight filtered through thick clouds hanging over the mountains. The town looked peaceful from a distance, but the icy roads and freezing wind reminded everyone how unforgiving Montana winters could become within minutes. Smoke rose from cabin chimneys, while snowplows groaned along the streets near downtown. Inside the Walker house, however, the atmosphere felt far colder than the weather outside. Ethan Walker stood in the kitchen pouring black coffee into a metal thermos, while Rex sat silently beside the back door. Even after several days in Montana, the German shepherd still behaved like he was on active deployment. Every creak in the house made his ears twitch. Every passing truck outside drew his attention toward the windows. Lily entered, wearing a thick gray hoodie and snow boots, barely glancing at her father before opening the refrigerator. "You heading to practice?" Ethan asked carefully. "Already late," Lily answered without emotion. Ethan studied her quietly. She looked exhausted. Dark circles had formed beneath her eyes, and despite her usual tough attitude, something about her seemed heavier lately. Rex slowly approached her. Lily looked down as the German shepherd gently nudged her hand with his nose. "You really like following people around, huh?" she muttered softly. Rex sat beside her instantly. Ethan noticed the tiny change in her voice. It was the first time she had spoken gently to anyone in days. Before he could say anything else, Megan entered carrying a veterinary jacket over one arm. "You're both impossible," she sighed tiredly. "There's enough tension in this house to freeze the pipes." Megan looked exhausted herself. Since Ethan returned home, she had barely slowed down between work and trying to keep peace inside the family. Years of handling everything alone had made her independent, but now she struggled to adjust to someone else sharing responsibility again. She kissed Ethan quickly before grabbing her keys. "Oh, Sheriff Daniel stopped by earlier," she added. "Said he wants to talk to you." Ethan frowned slightly. "About what?" He didn't say. 2 hours later, Ethan parked outside the Blackwood Ridge Sheriff's Department while snow continued falling across Main Street. Rex remained in the passenger seat, watching pedestrians through the windshield. Sheriff Daniel Brooks stepped out of the station, carrying a thick winter coat and a folder tucked beneath one arm. Daniel Brooks was a 44-year-old sheriff with a rugged build, broad shoulders, and weathered features shaped by years working mountain rescues in brutal conditions. His dark beard showed streaks of gray, and his sharp hazel eyes constantly scanned his surroundings like a man who trusted very little. Though respected throughout the county, Daniel had grown increasingly cynical after witnessing too many disappearances in the mountains over the years. "Walker?" Daniel greeted. "Daniel." The sheriff glanced toward Rex in the truck. "That dog still looks like he's hunting terrorists." "He probably thinks he is." Daniel gave a small grin before opening the folder. "We've had trouble up near Shadow Ridge." Ethan leaned against the truck quietly. "What kind of trouble?" "Missing hikers, hunters disappearing, strange campsites deep in the woods." Daniel lowered his voice slightly. "And signs of illegal trapping." Ethan frowned. "Poachers? Maybe worse." Daniel handed him several photographs. Dead elk, torn fencing, strange tire tracks deep in protected forest areas. "We found these 3 days ago." Ethan studied the images silently. "Fish and wildlife handling it?" "They're trying." Daniel looked toward the mountains in the distance. But something feels off. Before Ethan could respond, Rex suddenly growled low from inside the truck. Daniel glanced toward the dog uneasily. "He always do that?" "Only when he senses tension." The sheriff folded his arms. "I heard you're planning to take Lily camping." Ethan nodded. "Thought it might help." Daniel looked unconvinced. "Shadow Ridge isn't the safest place right now." Ethan met his gaze calmly. "With respect, I've survived Syria." Daniel gave a dry laugh. "Montana kills people too." That afternoon, Lily trained at the ski slopes outside town beneath heavy snowfall and bitter wind. Dozens of young athletes moved across the icy course, while Coach Jake Morrison shouted instructions from the sidelines. Lily flew down the hill with perfect control, carving sharply through each gate faster than everyone else again. But when she reached the finish line, no one celebrated with her. The other girls stood together farther down the slope, talking quietly among themselves. Jake approached Lily carefully. "You're isolating yourself again." "I'm here to ski, not make friends." Jake sighed heavily. "You know talent only gets you so far." Lily removed her helmet, snow sticking to loose strands of blonde hair around her face. "My dad used to say the same thing." Jake noticed the bitterness in her voice immediately. He had coached teenagers for nearly 15 years. He recognized pain when he saw it. Jake himself had once nearly qualified for the Winter Olympics before a devastating knee injury ended his career at 27. Since then, he dedicated his life to helping young athletes avoid becoming emotionally consumed by competition the way he once had. "You know," he said gently, "people can come back after being gone." Lily looked away toward the mountains. "Not always." That evening, Ethan loaded camping equipment into his truck while Rex circled the driveway restlessly. The closer the trip became, the more alert the dog seemed. Every few minutes, Rex stopped and stared toward the distant tree line surrounding the property. "What is it, boy?" Ethan asked quietly. Rex growled softly again. Megan stepped outside carrying folded blankets. "I still don't think this is a good idea." Ethan looked up from the truck bed. "She needs this." "No," Megan replied softly. "You need this." The words lingered between them. Megan walked closer. "You just got home, Ethan. Maybe don't disappear into the mountains immediately. I'm trying to reconnect with my daughter." "And what happens if you push too hard?" Ethan didn't answer. Megan glanced toward Rex. Even she noticed how strangely the dog had been acting lately. "He's nervous," she whispered. "He's adjusting." "No," Megan said quietly. "That's not adjustment." For a moment Ethan remembered Syria. The same restless pacing, the same constant scanning. Rex behaved this way before ambushes. He pushed the thought away. Lily emerged from the house carrying a backpack. "You guys done arguing?" Megan forced a smile. "Just be careful." Lily rolled her eyes lightly. "Mom, we're camping, not climbing Everest." But Megan's expression never softened. The next morning, Ethan's truck climbed the winding mountain roads toward Shadow Ridge beneath gray skies and falling snow. Dense pine forests surrounded the narrow highway, while icy cliffs rose beside them. Rex sat upright between Ethan and Lily, unusually tense. Lily glanced at the dog. "He's been weird all morning." Ethan kept his eyes on the road. He doesn't like unfamiliar territory. The deeper they drove into the mountains, the quieter Rex became. Suddenly, the German shepherd stood abruptly, staring out the passenger window toward the forest. His growl returned, low, deep, warning. Ethan slowed the truck slightly. "What now?" Lily asked. Rex barked once sharply toward the trees. For a split second, Ethan thought he saw movement between the pines. Then it vanished. Probably deer. But Rex didn't relax. By late afternoon, they reached a small ranger checkpoint near the entrance to Shadow Ridge Trail. An elderly forest ranger stepped out of a tiny wooden cabin holding a clipboard. Walter Hayes was a thin, 70-year-old ranger with wrinkled skin, white stubble, and tired eyes shaped by decades living in the wilderness. Quiet and observant, Walter trusted animals more than people after spending most of his life alone in the mountains. He looked down at Rex immediately. That dog military? Retired canine, Ethan answered. Walter nodded slowly. Smart animals don't like these woods lately. Ethan frowned. Meaning? The old ranger hesitated. Something's driving wildlife lower down the mountain. He looked toward the forest uneasily. Even wolves. Lily shifted slightly in her seat. There are wolves out here? Walter nodded. Big ones. Rex suddenly jumped out of the truck before Ethan could stop him. The German shepherd moved several feet into the snow beside the road and froze. Completely still, Ethan approached carefully. What is it? Rex lowered his nose toward the ground, then growled. Deep paw prints stretched across the snow between the trees, but these tracks looked wrong, far too large. Lily stepped closer slowly. Oh my God. Even Ethan's expression hardened. The tracks were nearly twice the size of a normal wolf's prints. Fresh, very fresh. Rex backed slightly toward Lily, positioning himself protectively in front of her while staring into the dark forest ahead. And somewhere deep within the trees, something howled. The howl echoed through the frozen forest long after the sound itself had faded. Snow drifted silently between the pine trees surrounding Shadow Ridge, while Rex stood stiff beside Lily, every muscle in the German shepherd's body locked with tension. The huge paw prints disappeared deeper into the woods ahead, partially covered by fresh snow blowing across the trail. Walter Hayes slowly stepped backward toward his ranger cabin. Even the old mountain ranger looked unsettled now. I've lived up here 40 years, Walter muttered quietly. Never seen tracks like those. Ethan crouched beside the prints, studying them carefully. Years of military survival training had sharpened his instincts, and something about the scene felt deeply wrong. The stride was too wide, too heavy. Rex suddenly growled again, louder this time. Lily glanced nervously toward the trees. Maybe we should go somewhere else. Ethan stood slowly. His expression remained calm, but inside, he already regretted bringing her here. We'll stay one night, he said. If weather gets worse, we head back in the morning. Walter looked unconvinced. Storm's coming fast. Ethan noticed the clouds now. Thick, gray masses rolled above the mountains, swallowing the last sunlight behind the peaks. Blizzards move quickly here, Walter warned. You don't want to get trapped after dark. Rex barked sharply toward the forest. Ethan clipped the leash tighter onto the dog's harness. We'll be careful. But as Ethan led Lily back toward the truck, Walter watched the trees with the uneasy expression of someone who knew danger was already too close. By late afternoon, snow covered nearly every part of the mountain trail leading toward their campsite. The deeper Ethan drove into Shadow Ridge, the narrower the road became. Dense forests blocked most of the light, while freezing wind slammed against the truck windows. Inside the cab, Lily sat quietly staring outside. Rex remained restless. The German shepherd constantly shifted positions, ears twitching at sounds Ethan himself couldn't hear. Twice already, Rex had growled toward movement deep between the trees. You think he actually saw something? Lily asked softly. Ethan kept both hands on the steering wheel. Rex doesn't overreact. That answer only made her more nervous. Finally, they reached a small clearing beside a frozen creek, where Ethan decided to set camp before sunset disappeared completely. The moment Rex jumped from the truck, he immediately began circling the perimeter. His nose stayed low to the ground as he moved through the snow with military precision. Lily unloaded supplies, while Ethan assembled the tent beneath worsening wind. "You've done this a lot?" she asked quietly. "Camping?" Ethan smirked faintly. "Before the army, your grandfather practically raised me outdoors." Lily hesitated before speaking again. "You never talk about him." Ethan paused briefly while securing one corner of the tent. "He died while I was deployed overseas." Lily's expression softened slightly. "I didn't know that. I wasn't home much back then either." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rex barked aggressively toward the woods. Both turned instantly. The German shepherd stood near the frozen creek, staring into the dark trees across the water. "What is it?" Ethan called. Rex didn't move. Snow began falling harder. Nearly 20 miles away in Blackwood Ridge, Sheriff Daniel Brooks stood inside the emergency operations room of the sheriff's department, studying weather reports spread across a table. Deputy Carla Ruiz entered carrying a radio scanner. Carla Ruiz was a 32-year-old deputy with short black hair, sharp brown eyes, and a compact athletic build. calm under pressure. She had previously worked wildfire rescues in Colorado before transferring to Montana after losing her fiancé during a rescue accident 3 years earlier. Since then, she rarely allowed herself emotional attachments. The storm escalated faster than expected, Carla said. Mountain roads may close by midnight. Daniel cursed quietly. Any word from Walker? Nothing yet. Daniel looked toward the storm outside the station windows. Something about Shadow Ridge bothered him more than he wanted to admit, especially after the animal carcasses they'd discovered recently. At the same time, Megan Walker worked late inside the Blackwood Ridge Veterinary Clinic, while snow battered the windows outside. A frightened golden retriever whined softly on the examination table as Megan stitched a deep cut along its leg. "You're okay," she whispered gently. Despite her calm tone, her mind remained somewhere else entirely. Her phone sat beside the medical tray. No signal from Ethan. Again, Megan tried calling once more, straight to voicemail. Nearby, her elderly assistant Gloria Bennett glanced up from a cabinet. Gloria Bennett was a 60-year-old veterinary assistant with silver hair tied into a loose bun and warm grandmotherly features. Though small and soft-spoken, she had worked alongside Megan for nearly a decade and understood her moods instantly. "You're worried," Gloria said quietly. Megan sighed. "I just have a bad feeling." Gloria finished organizing medications before walking closer. "Your husband survived war." Megan looked down at the silent phone. "That's exactly why I'm worried." Back at Shadow Ridge, darkness arrived quickly. The blizzard intensified so violently that visibility dropped to barely 20 feet beyond the campsite. Snow hammered the tent, while freezing wind screamed through the trees. Inside, Lily sat wrapped in blankets beside a small lantern, while Ethan heated canned soup over a portable stove. Rex lay near the tent entrance, wide awake. The German Shepherd hadn't rested once since arriving. "You think he ever sleeps?" Lily asked quietly. "Not when he thinks we're in danger." The words lingered heavily between them. Outside, branches creaked violently under the storm. Then came another sound, a metallic clanging somewhere deeper in the woods. Rex jumped to his feet instantly. Ethan grabbed his flashlight. "Stay here. I'm coming too." "Lily, I'm not a little kid." Ethan hesitated, then nodded once. Minutes later, the three moved cautiously through heavy snow, illuminated only by Ethan's flashlight beam. The strange metallic sound continued. Clang, clang, clang. Rex suddenly pulled ahead, then stopped beside a hidden steel trap buried beneath snow. Lily gasped. Blood stained the metal jaws. Fresh blood. "What the hell?" Ethan muttered. Rex growled furiously now. Ethan followed more tracks through the trees until they spotted something ahead through the storm. A cabin. Old. Weather-beaten. Hidden deep in the forest. One faint light glowed behind a boarded window. The closer Rex moved toward it, the more aggressive he became. His growls no longer sounded defensive. They sounded hateful. Ethan slowly approached the structure. Animal bones littered the snow nearby. Then he saw them. Dozens of illegal traps hanging from the cabin wall, some still stained with blood. Lily's face turned pale. Who would do this? Ethan's expression darkened. Poachers. Rex barked violently at the cabin door. Ethan raised his flashlight toward a workbench visible through the dirty window. Wolf pelts, elk antlers, rifles, and photographs pinned across the wall. One image immediately caught Ethan's attention. A tall man standing beside a dead mountain lion. Victor Kane. The name was written across the bottom of the photo. Ethan's jaw tightened instantly. Victor Kane had once been investigated years earlier for illegal hunting operations across several states, but authorities never proved anything. "What's wrong?" Lily asked. Ethan kept staring at the photograph. "This guy is dangerous." Suddenly Rex lunged toward the woods behind the cabin, barking wildly. Not at the cabin, at something moving beyond it. A shadow disappeared between the trees. Ethan instantly pulled Lily closer. Back to camp, now. The storm roared louder around them as they hurried back through deep snow. Lily stumbled beside him, terrified. "Dad." The word slipped out naturally before she even realized she said it. Ethan looked at her briefly. For the first time in years, she had called him that without anger. Rex continued growling behind them the entire way back to camp. And somewhere deep within the blizzard, something, or someone, was watching them. The storm swallowed the mountains whole. Snow blasted through the forest with such force that Ethan could barely see more than a few feet ahead as he, Lily, and Rex pushed through the darkness toward their campsite. The wind howled between the trees like distant screams, while branches cracked somewhere deep within the woods. Rex stayed close beside Lily now, constantly glancing behind them toward the hidden cabin they had just escaped. Ethan tightened his grip on the flashlight. "Keep moving," he said sharply. Lily stumbled through knee-deep snow beside him. Fear showed clearly across her face now, but she kept going. Behind them, somewhere beyond the blizzard, came the faint sound of a snowmobile engine. Ethan froze instantly. Rex growled low. Someone was following them. Nearly 15 miles away, Sheriff Daniel Brooks sat inside the county records office, surrounded by old case files spread across a desk. Deputy Carla Ruiz worked beside him, while snow battered the station windows outside. Daniel stared at an old photograph, clipped inside a worn investigation folder. Victor Kane. The man looked younger in the image, but just as dangerous. Tall, heavily built, with shaved dark hair, pale scarred skin, and cold gray eyes that carried no emotion whatsoever. "He was military?" Carla asked. Daniel nodded grimly. "Private contractor first, then mercenary work overseas." He flipped through more documents. Victor Kane had spent years operating in war zones across Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Rumors connected him to smuggling operations, illegal weapon sales, and multiple violent assaults, but charges never stuck. Witnesses disappeared. Evidence vanished. "He's killed before," Daniel muttered. Carla crossed her arms tightly. "And now he's hiding in our mountains." Daniel looked toward the storm outside. And Walker just walked straight into his territory. Back in Shadow Ridge, Ethan finally spotted the faint outline of their campsite through the blizzard. But the moment they entered the clearing, Rex barked violently. Their tent had been slashed open. Supplies were scattered across the snow. Someone had already been there. Lily's breathing quickened. "Dad." Ethan crouched beside the ruined tent carefully. Fresh boot prints, large, military style. Rex snarled toward the tree line. Then the flashlight beam caught movement between the pines. A man stood watching them. Tall, broad shoulders, dark winter coat covered in snow. Victor Kane. For several seconds nobody moved. Then Victor smiled faintly. It wasn't a normal smile. It looked empty, predatory. "You people should have kept driving," Victor called calmly through the storm. Ethan slowly stepped in front of Lily. Victor's eyes shifted toward Rex. "That dog's military," Rex barked furiously. Victor's expression darkened slightly. "I hate military dogs." Ethan kept his voice calm. "You following us?" Victor shrugged. "You wandered somewhere dangerous." Lightning flashed briefly across the mountains behind him. Then Victor raised a rifle. "Run!" Ethan shouted. The gunshot exploded through the forest. Rex lunged instantly as Ethan tackled Lily into the snow. Another bullet tore through the remains of the campsite. "Move!" Ethan yelled. They sprinted into the trees while Victor pursued them through the storm. Snow and darkness blurred together as the chase tore across the mountain trails. Ethan guided Lily downhill through narrow gaps between pine trees, while Rex ran behind them, repeatedly stopping to bark toward Victor's position. Gunshots echoed again. One round slammed into a tree inches from Ethan's head. "Faster!" he shouted. Lily's legs shook violently from exhaustion, but adrenaline kept her moving. The trail suddenly opened onto a deep gorge splitting through the mountain. An old wooden bridge stretched across it, half-rotted, swinging dangerously in the wind. Ethan's face tightened instantly. No other way across. "Go!" he ordered. Lily hesitated only a second before sprinting onto the bridge. Rex followed directly behind her. The old wood groaned beneath their weight. Then came another rifle shot. A cable snapped violently. The entire bridge lurched sideways. "Lily!" Ethan shouted. The boards beneath her feet cracked apart. Without thinking, Ethan lunged forward and grabbed her arm just as she slipped toward the freezing gorge below. The impact slammed Ethan hard against the collapsing wood. Pain exploded through his shoulder. Rex barked wildly from the opposite side. The bridge continued breaking apart beneath them. "Pull!" Ethan shouted through clenched teeth. Lily grabbed the rope desperately, while Ethan forced her upward with his remaining strength. For one horrifying second, Ethan almost lost his grip. Then Rex rushed forward, clamping his teeth onto Lily's jacket sleeve. and pulling backward with all his strength. Together, they dragged her safely onto solid ground. But the bridge collapsed completely beneath Ethan. Wood shattered into the gorge below. Ethan barely managed to grab a hanging cable before falling. He slammed hard against the cliffside, hanging above darkness. "Dad!" Lily screamed. Snow swirled violently around them. Ethan gritted his teeth against the pain shooting through his shoulder and ribs. "I'm okay!" He wasn't. Blood soaked through his jacket sleeve. Rex barked frantically, pacing near the cliff edge. From somewhere behind them came the sound of Victor approaching through the forest, crunching footsteps, slow, confident. Ethan's expression changed immediately. "Listen to me carefully," he told Lily. "You need to go." "No!" "Lily!" His voice hardened. "Now!" She shook her head, terrified. Ethan pulled a small emergency radio from his jacket and tossed it upward toward her. "You remember what I taught you?" Lily stared at the radio with trembling hands. "Dad, you can do this." Victor's silhouette slowly appeared between the trees behind them, rifle raised. Rex immediately stepped in front of Lily, growling viciously. Victor laughed quietly. "That dog's loyal." Ethan forced himself upward painfully onto a narrow ledge beneath the cliff. "Rex!" he shouted sharply. The German shepherd looked back instantly. "Protect her!" Rex hesitated. For the first time since Syria, Ethan saw conflict in the dog's eyes. Rex didn't want to leave him. Another gunshot shattered nearby rocks. "Go!" Ethan roared. Finally, Rex grabbed Lily's sleeve gently and pulled her away from the cliff into the forest. Victor started after them immediately. Ethan raised his pistol from the ledge below. "Hey!" Victor turned. Ethan fired twice. The bullets forced Victor behind cover, long enough for Lily and Rex to disappear deeper into the blizzard. The storm worsened by the minute. Lily stumbled through the forest, barely able to breathe, as Rex guided her through the darkness. Snow coated the dog's fur thickly now, but he never slowed down. Every few seconds, Rex stopped and looked back toward Ethan's direction, whining, torn between protecting Lily and returning to his partner. "I know," Lily whispered shakily. "I know." Her hands trembled as she clutched the emergency radio. She had never used one before. Not really. Fear threatened to overwhelm her completely. Then she remembered Ethan's voice during camping lessons years earlier. "Stay calm first. Panic kills faster than cold." Lily swallowed hard and turned the radio on. Static exploded through the speaker. "This is..." Her voice cracked. "This is Lily Walker." Nothing. She tried again. "This is Lily Walker. We need help." Static. Then suddenly, "Lily?" Daniel's voice burst through the radio. "Lily, do you copy?" Tears instantly filled her eyes. Rex barked loudly beside her. "We're in Shadow Ridge," she cried. "My dad's hurt." Daniel's tone sharpened instantly. "Stay where you are. Rescue teams are moving now." Lily looked down at Rex. The German shepherd stared back toward the mountains behind them, where Ethan remained trapped somewhere in the storm. And far away through the darkness, another gunshot echoed across the forest. The storm had become a living monster. Snow tore violently through Shadow Ridge, while freezing winds screamed across the mountains hard enough to shake entire trees. Visibility dropped to almost nothing as rescue vehicles slowly climbed the icy roads toward the upper trails. Inside one of the emergency trucks, Sheriff Daniel Brooks gripped the radio tightly while staring through the windshield at the white chaos ahead. "We're close to Lily's last signal," Deputy Carla Ruiz reported from the passenger seat. Daniel nodded grimly. "Keep moving." Behind them, another set of headlights fought through the storm. Megan Walker's ambulance. Megan drove with both hands locked tightly around the steering wheel as snow hammered the glass. Fear had completely overtaken exhaustion now. She had ignored every warning to stay behind. Nothing on earth would stop her from reaching her family. Beside her sat paramedic Owen Carter. Owen Carter was a 26-year-old emergency medic with curly blonde hair, tired brown eyes, and a calm personality that helped stabilize panicked patients during mountain rescues. Though relatively young, he had already witnessed enough winter accidents in Montana to understand how deadly storms like this could become. "You sure you should be up here?" Owen asked carefully. Megan never looked away from the road. "My husband and daughter are out there." That answer ended the conversation immediately. Far deeper in the mountains, Lily stumbled through thick snow beside Rex while clutching the emergency radio tightly against her chest. Her cheeks were pale from cold, and exhaustion slowed every step now. Rex suddenly stopped. The German Shepherd turned back toward the direction Ethan had stayed behind, whining softly. Even injured and exhausted, the dog still wanted to return to his partner. Lily knelt beside him, breathing hard. "We're going back for him." Rex stared into her eyes for a moment, then barked once. The dog understood. A mile away, Ethan Walker struggled painfully across a narrow ledge deep within the gorge beneath the collapsed bridge. Snow continued falling into the canyon, while loose rocks crumbled beneath his boots. Blood soaked through his torn jacket sleeve, where his shoulder had slammed against the bridge cables earlier. Every breath hurt now. Ethan finally reached a small opening between the rocks that offered temporary shelter from the wind. Then the mountain rumbled. Ethan looked upward instantly. A section of snow and ice suddenly collapsed from the ridge above. The avalanche slammed into the gorge with terrifying force. Ethan barely managed to dive behind the rocks before snow buried part of the canyon entrance completely. Silence followed, heavy, terrifying. Ethan coughed hard while pulling himself free from packed snow. The avalanche hadn't fully buried him, but it had trapped him. The narrow escape route out of the gorge was now blocked beneath tons of snow and ice. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something close to helplessness. He leaned back against the frozen stone, breathing painfully. Then he saw it, an old photograph inside his jacket pocket. Lily at 8 years old, smiling beside a snowman, taken before Syria, before Afghanistan, before all the years he spent choosing war over home. Ethan stared at the picture quietly while guilt settled heavily inside him. "I missed too much," he whispered to himself. Meanwhile, Lily and Rex carefully moved downhill through the storm, trying to retrace Ethan's path. Rex led confidently despite the blizzard. Several times the German Shepherd stopped to sniff the air before changing direction slightly, guiding Lily through terrain she never could have survived alone. Suddenly the radio crackled again. "Lily, this is Daniel. I hear you. Stay where you are. Rescue teams are almost there." Lily looked down at Rex. "No," she answered firmly. "My dad's trapped somewhere below the bridge." Daniel paused, then his tone changed. "You know where he is?" "Not exactly," Rex barked sharply. "But Rex does." Daniel exchanged a look with Carla inside the rescue truck. "That dog's tracking him? He won't stop trying to go back." Daniel made a quick decision. "All right, we follow the dog." Half an hour later, searchlights cut through the storm as rescue teams finally reached the collapsed bridge area. Snowmobiles and rescue crews spread across the mountain, while radios crackled constantly through the darkness. Lily stood beside Daniel and Carla, while Rex pulled anxiously against his leash. "He's down there," Lily insisted. Daniel studied the unstable gorge uneasily. Fresh avalanche debris covered most of the canyon entrance. Carla looked toward the ridge above. Another slide could bury the whole area. Rex barked violently, then suddenly tore free from Lily's grip. "Rex!" she shouted. The German Shepherd sprinted directly toward the gorge. Without hesitation, Lily ran after him. "Lily!" Daniel yelled. But she kept going. Deep inside the canyon, Ethan heard barking echo faintly through the snowstorm. "Rex!" Ethan forced himself painfully upright. "Rex!" The barking grew louder. Then suddenly the German Shepherd burst through a narrow opening in the snow-covered rocks and charged toward him. Relief flooded Ethan's face instantly. Rex whined loudly while pressing against him, checking his injuries frantically. "You stubborn dog," Ethan muttered weakly. Then another sound echoed through the gorge. Footsteps, crunching slowly through snow. Victor Kane emerged from the storm holding his rifle loosely at his side. Blood stained one sleeve where Ethan had shot at him earlier, but Victor still smiled coldly. "Told you this mountain was dangerous." Rex instantly stepped in front of Ethan, growling. Every hair along the dog's back rose sharply. Victor looked almost amused. "That dog really would die for you." Ethan slowly reached for his pistol. Empty. Victor noticed immediately. "No bullets left?" he asked calmly. The mercenary stepped closer. "You know what your problem is, Walker?" Victor said. "You spent your whole life fighting for people who forgot about you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about my family." Victor raised the rifle. Rex exploded forward. The German Shepherd slammed into Victor with full force before the rifle fired. Both crashed violently into the snow-covered rocks. Victor shouted in pain as Rex's jaws clamped onto his arm. The rifle slid across the canyon floor. "Rex!" Ethan yelled. Victor punched the dog repeatedly, but Rex refused to let go. The German shepherd growled with terrifying fury now, protecting Ethan exactly as he had done in war zones overseas. Then Victor pulled a hunting knife from his belt. Lily's scream echoed from above the gorge entrance. "No!" Victor stabbed downward. Rex yelped painfully, but still didn't release him. Blood spread across the snow beneath the dog's side. Ethan lunged forward despite his injuries, slamming Victor hard against the rocks. The two men crashed violently into the canyon wall while Rex staggered weakly nearby. Victor swung the knife wildly. Ethan blocked one strike before driving his fist into Victor's jaw repeatedly. The fight turned savage, desperate. Years of military combat instincts exploded back to life inside Ethan. Finally, Victor reached for the dropped rifle again. A shotgun blast thundered through the canyon. Victor froze. Sheriff Daniel stood at the gorge entrance surrounded by armed rescue deputies. "Drop it!" Victor slowly raised his hands. Carla and two deputies rushed forward immediately, forcing him face first into the snow before handcuffing him. Victor glared at Ethan hatefully, while blood dripped from his mouth. "This mountain should have buried you." Daniel pulled him roughly to his feet. "Instead, it buried your career." The moment Victor was secured, Lily dropped beside Rex in the snow. The German shepherd lay breathing heavily, blood soaking through his fur where the knife had cut deep into his side. "Oh my God," Lily whispered shakily. Rex weakly lifted his head when she touched him. Tears finally broke free down Lily's face. "You saved us," she cried softly. "You saved everybody." Megan rushed into the canyon moments later alongside Owen Carter, carrying medical supplies. The second Megan saw Ethan alive, she nearly collapsed in relief. But Lily barely noticed. She stayed beside Rex, holding his head gently in her lap while snow fell around them. The German shepherd's tired amber eyes slowly looked up toward her. Lily stroked his blood-covered fur carefully. "You're not just Dad's partner anymore," she whispered through tears. "You're the hero of this family." Rex's tail moved weakly once against the snow, and for the first time since Ethan returned home, the Walker family stood together again. Winter finally loosened its grip on Montana. By early April, the snow-covering Blackwood Ridge had begun melting beneath warmer sunlight spilling across the mountains. Rivers flowed again through the valleys surrounding Glacier National Park. Pine trees swayed beneath softer winds, and wildflowers slowly emerged through patches of thawing earth. The town itself seemed lighter somehow, as if Shadow Ridge had finally exhaled after months of fear and silence. For the Walker family, however, healing had taken much longer than the snow. Inside the Blackwood Ridge Veterinary Clinic, Rex lay stretched across a large, padded blanket near the examination room windows, while sunlight warmed the thick black and tan fur along his side. The scar from Victor Kane's knife wound remained visible beneath his ribs, but the German shepherd had recovered far better than anyone expected. Megan Walker knelt beside him, carefully removing the final protective bandage from his side. "There you go, handsome," she whispered softly. Rex immediately pushed his head gently against her shoulder. Megan smiled for what felt like the first genuine time in months. "You're officially impossible to kill." Ethan leaned against the doorway nearby, arms folded quietly across his chest. The deep bruising along his shoulder had mostly healed too, though he still moved stiffly some mornings from the injuries inside the gorge. "You know," Ethan muttered, "he's going to milk this injury for attention the rest of his life." Rex looked directly at him and barked once. Megan laughed softly. That sound alone made Ethan pause. For years, their home had felt weighed down by distance, exhaustion, and silence. Now little moments like this suddenly mattered again. Nearby, Lily sat on the clinic counter, scrolling through messages from her ski teammates. But unlike before, she wasn't ignoring them anymore. Over the past several months, Lily Walker had changed in ways even she barely understood. The cold distance she once kept between herself and everyone else had slowly faded after Shadow Ridge. The fear, the storm, and almost losing her father forced her to realize how much time anger had stolen from her life. Now, instead of isolating herself during practice, Lily actually stayed after training with the team. Coach Jake Morrison noticed the difference immediately. One afternoon during practice, Jake stood beside the ski slope, watching Lily help another girl adjust her equipment before a race. Jake smiled faintly. "There she is," he muttered. Lily overheard him. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jake crossed his arms with a grin. "You finally figured out you're not competing alone." Lily rolled her eyes slightly, but she smiled afterward. It still felt strange sometimes, being happy. 2 weeks later, crowds gathered beneath bright blue skies at the Montana State Junior Ski Championship in Helena. Colorful flags lined the course, while families packed the viewing stands surrounding the icy downhill track. Lily stood at the starting platform beside her teammates, wearing the black and silver uniform of Blackwood Ridge High School. This time, she wasn't standing alone. Beside her was Emma Reynolds, one of the teammates she used to avoid constantly. Emma Reynolds was a 16-year-old skier with curly brown hair, freckles, and an endlessly energetic personality that annoyed Lily when they first met. But after Shadow Ridge, Lily slowly realized Emma had never actually disliked her. She had simply stopped trying after being pushed away too many times. "You nervous?" Emma asked. "A little." Emma laughed dramatically. "Good. If you weren't nervous, you'd be a psychopath." Lily shook her head, smiling. Farther down the hill, Ethan, Megan, and Rex stood watching beside the crowd barriers. Several children nearby pointed excitedly toward Rex. "That's the hero dog." Rex had become something of a local legend after the events at Shadow Ridge. News stations across Montana covered the story for weeks. Pictures of the German Shepherd rescuing Ethan spread online, and now almost everyone in Blackwood Ridge recognized him instantly. Rex, however, seemed far less interested in fame than the children around him. His attention stayed entirely fixed on Lily at the top of the mountain. The race began moments later. Lily launched down the course with incredible speed, cutting through the gates sharply while snow sprayed behind her skis. But halfway down the course, one of her teammates lost balance near a difficult turn and nearly crashed into a safety barrier. Old Lily would have ignored it and focused only on winning. Not anymore. Lily slowed just enough to shout a warning and redirect the girl safely back onto the course before continuing downhill herself. The lost seconds cost Lily first place individually, but Blackwood Ridge won the overall state championship as a team, and somehow that felt better. When Lily crossed the finish line, Ethan clapped harder than anyone there. Rex barked loudly beside him. Lily laughed breathlessly before kneeling beside the dog. "You saw that, huh?" Rex licked snow off her glove instantly. Later that evening, celebrations filled downtown Blackwood Ridge, while music played outside local restaurants, and families gathered beneath strings of hanging lights. Inside the sheriff's office, however, Sheriff Daniel Brooks sat across from Ethan, reviewing several official documents. Victor Kane had finally been sentenced earlier that afternoon. 27 years in federal prison, illegal trafficking, wildlife crimes, attempted murder. Daniel tossed the paperwork aside. "Good riddance," Ethan nodded quietly. "What happens to the land up there now?" "State's reclaiming most of it." Daniel leaned back slightly. "No more poachers." For a moment, silence settled between them. Then Daniel slid another folder across the desk. "What's this?" Ethan asked. "A job offer." Ethan raised an eyebrow. Daniel smirked faintly. "You and Rex already know the mountains better than half my rescue unit." He shrugged casually. "Part-time mountain search and rescue consultant." Ethan stared at the offer silently. "You serious?" "Dead serious." Ethan looked through the office window toward the town outside. For years after leaving the military, he thought he no longer had a purpose outside war. Now he wasn't so sure. By early summer, construction had officially begun on a new training facility outside Blackwood Ridge, Walker Mountain Rescue K-9 Center. The property sat on several acres near the edge of the forest, with open fields, obstacle courses, and search areas designed specifically for rescue dogs. Ethan worked alongside Megan almost every day building the center together. It became the first thing they had truly created as partners in years. One afternoon, Lily watched from a fence while Ethan trained a young German Shepherd puppy through basic rescue commands. The puppy stumbled clumsily through the grass before accidentally crashing into Rex. Rex looked deeply offended. Lily burst out laughing. "You're getting old, buddy." Rex barked dramatically in protest. Nearby, Megan shook her head, smiling. "He knows exactly what you said." The puppy being trained belonged to Noah Bennett, a 17-year-old volunteer hoping to join future mountain rescue teams. Noah was tall, awkward, and painfully shy, but incredibly patient with animals. After losing his older brother during a hiking accident years earlier, he dedicated himself to wilderness rescue work. "You think he's learning?" Noah asked nervously while the puppy chewed on his shoelace. Ethan smirked. "He's learning you're easy to manipulate." Laughter filled the field. Real laughter. The kind the Walker family hadn't shared in years. Several weeks later, just before sunrise, Ethan drove Lily and Rex up toward the overlook above Shadow Ridge. The mountains stretched endlessly beneath soft golden morning light, while mist drifted through the valleys below. Spring had transformed the once dead landscape completely. Wildflowers covered hillsides where snowstorms once nearly killed them. For a long time, none of them spoke. Then Lily quietly stepped beside her father. "You know," she said softly, "I used to hate these mountains." Ethan glanced toward her. "And now?" She looked down at Rex sitting calmly between them. "Now I think they gave me my family back." Ethan's expression softened. Rex sat proudly between father and daughter, his fur glowing gold beneath the rising sun. Not just a retired German Shepherd canine anymore, not just a war dog, but the bond that held an entire broken family together when everything else nearly fell apart. And as sunlight spread across the Montana mountains, Ethan realized something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Sometimes life doesn't break us all at once. Sometimes it happens slowly through distance, silence, missed moments, and the people we stop talking to because we think there will always be more time. Ethan spent years fighting wars far from home, believing he was protecting his family. But in the process, he almost lost the very people he loved most. It took a storm, a mountain, and one loyal German Shepherd named Rex to remind him that the greatest battles are often fought inside our own homes and hearts. This story reminds us that healing is possible. Families can reconnect. Broken trust can return. And sometimes the ones who save us are not the strongest people in the room, but the ones who never leave our side when life becomes dark. In everyday life, we all know someone carrying pain quietly, a parent trying their best, a child feeling alone, a friend hiding their struggles behind silence. A little kindness, patience, or forgiveness can change someone's life more than we realize. And just like Rex, loyalty and love still matter in this world. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, or share a moment when someone stood beside you during a difficult time. And if you believe God watches over families, protects the broken, and brings people home even after the darkest storms, type Amen in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more emotional and inspiring stories. May God bless you, your family, and everyone you love with peace, protection, healing, and hope.